In the year 2197, humanity had spread its wings far beyond Earth. The first successful voyages to neighboring planets had ignited an insatiable thirst for exploration. But beyond the fringes of known space, beyond the boundaries of even the most sophisticated human starships, lay the mysterious void, the dark frontier, an expanse untouched by human hands or instruments. For centuries, the great powers of Earth had focused on establishing colonies, securing resources, and engaging in interstellar trade with nearby star systems. The thought of crossing into the uncharted, where unknown dangers lurked, had seemed too perilous, too reckless. But all that was about to change. The galaxy had watched with bated breath as the Odyssey, the first ship built specifically for the journey beyond the known realms, was unveiled. It was a symbol of human ambition, sleek, silver, and armed with the latest technology, equipped with a warp drive powerful enough to cut through light years of darkness in mere moments. Its mission was unprecedented: to venture into the heart of the dark frontier and return with knowledge that could shape humanity's future. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, staring out at the endless void stretching before them. The stars seemed distant and cold, like pinpricks of light in a sea of black. It was a sight she had seen countless times before, yet never had it felt so alien. She knew the stakes. The Odyssey wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, a message to the galaxy that humanity was ready to face the unknown. "Ready when you are, Captain," said Lieutenant Julian Cole, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Elena nodded, her hand hovering over the command console. The mission briefing had been clear: go as far as they could into the dark frontier, collect as much data as possible and return. Simple in theory. But the unknown had a way of making even the simplest things complicated. "We've got one shot at this," she muttered to herself. "Make it count." As the countdown began, Elena took a deep breath. The crew was ready, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead hung heavily in the air. Her thoughts drifted to her family back on Earth, to the friends she had lost in previous expeditions, and to the promise she had made to herself: to see the stars, to push humanity's boundaries to their very limits, and to return with something no one else had ever seen before. The warp engines hummed to life, and the ship trembled as it prepared to enter the great unknown. A sense of exhilaration mixed with fear gripped Elena's heart. Was this truly the dawn of a new era for humanity, or would they be forever lost to the vastness of space? "Engage," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. With a flash of light, the Odyssey shot forward into the dark expanse, leaving behind the familiar stars of known space. As the ship accelerated, Elena felt a strange sensation, a sense of liberation, of stepping into the void and embracing the infinite. They had crossed the line and there was no going back. But as the ship moved farther from the safety of the known systems, strange signals began to appear on their sensors. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A rhythmic pattern. An unnatural pulse, almost like a heartbeat, emanating from deep within the dark frontier. "Captain, we've got something," said Cole, his voice tinged with excitement. It's not natural. It's coming from a point ahead of us." Elena's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, not natural?" "It's a signal, too complex to be random. It's intelligent." A shiver ran down Elena's spine. Could it be? Had they found evidence of life, of another civilization, hidden in the deepest reaches of the galaxy? "Plot a course toward the source," she ordered. "Full speed ahead." With each passing moment, the unknown grew closer, and the promise of discovery seemed to stretch out before them like an invitation. The Odyssey moved forward, its engines roaring as it cut through the void. Whatever lay ahead, Elena knew one thing for sure: humanity was about to step into a new chapter of its history. And they were not alone. The Odyssey streaked through the void, propelled by its powerful warp engines. Every crew member on board was glued to their stations, watching as the unknown signal grew stronger, clearer, more distinct. It pulsed with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic, drawing them forward with an intensity they couldn't ignore. Yet, despite their excitement, a deep sense of unease lingered. They were venturing into space where no human had gone before. This wasn't just uncharted territory, it was a realm that had remained untouched for millennia, possibly longer. Captain Elena Voss stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the flickering readings that danced across the monitor in front of her. "How much farther, Lieutenant?" she asked, her voice steady though her mind raced. "Another 2 hours at our current speed, Captain," Lieutenant Cole replied, his hands moving quickly across the console. "The signal is definitely coming from that direction. It's unlike anything we've encountered." Elena's stomach tightened. She had been trained for this, had prepared for the unknown, but there was no manual for what they were about to experience. She was about to step into a chapter of history that had yet to be written, and the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Behind her, Commander Alara Tanaka, the ship's chief science officer, approached. "Captain, I'm running some preliminary analyses on the signal. The frequency pattern it's not a natural occurrence. It seems to be a form of communication, but we can't decode it just yet. Could it be a distress signal?" Elena asked, hoping for something more familiar, something they could understand. "Maybe a stranded ship?" Alara shook her head, a worried frown on her face. "No, it's too structured. If it were distress, it would be erratic. This has a purpose." The tension on the bridge grew as the Odyssey hurtled deeper into the dark. Elena glanced at the crew, their faces tense but determined. They were all here for the same reason, to unlock the mysteries of the universe. And they would do so together no matter what lay ahead. Then, without warning, the signal abruptly intensified, flooding the ship's sensors with a barrage of data. The ship lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. Red lights flashed and alarms blared. The once steady hum of the engines faltered as the ship's system struggled to process the surge of information. "What the hell was that?" Lieutenant Cole shouted, trying to stabilize the ship's trajectory. "I don't know," Elena replied, gripping the console to keep herself steady. "Alara, what's happening?" "We've entered the source's proximity, Captain," Alara responded, her voice shaky. "The signal's intensity is overwhelming our systems. It's almost as if it's pulling us toward it." Elena's heart raced. "Can we override it?" "I'm trying, but the interference is unlike anything we've seen before," Alara said, her voice strained as she fought against the pull. For a moment, the Odyssey seemed to shudder in space, caught in an invisible force. The vastness of the galaxy, which had once felt so infinite and open, now felt like a trap. But Elena's resolve never wavered. She wasn't about to let fear dictate their actions. "Maintain course," Elena ordered firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're not turning back now. Prepare for whatever comes next." The crew scrambled to stabilize the ship, but the force of the signal grew stronger by the second, warping space itself. Suddenly, the ship's forward sensors picked up something, a massive structure floating just ahead, hidden within the dark clouds of cosmic dust. The structure wasn't like anything humanity had ever encountered. A vast, metallic formation, complex and organic in its design, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. "Elena, you need to see this," Alara's voice trembled over the comms. Elena rushed to the observation window, her breath catching in her throat. The alien structure was colossal, far larger than the Odyssey itself. It was impossibly intricate, built from materials that shimmered and shifted with the faint light of distant stars. It seemed to be alive, its surface undulating as though it were breathing. The signal originated from this very structure, a pulsating beacon that seemed to beckon them forward. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crew stood frozen, staring at the incomprehensible sight before them. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Humanity had discovered something far beyond their understanding. Is it a ship?" Lieutenant Cole whispered, as if afraid to break the spell of awe. "I don't think so," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's something else. Something older." "Captain," Alara said, her tone hesitant. "We're being pulled in. The ship's thrusters are failing." Before Elena could respond, a low hum filled the ship, and suddenly they were no longer alone. The structure's surface rippled, and from it, vast, shadowy figures began to emerge. They were silhouettes at first, but their presence was undeniable. Massive beings, their forms cloaked in darkness, yet there was something undeniably human about them. They watched the Odyssey, their gaze penetrating as if they had been expecting its arrival. Elena's pulse quickened. The question now wasn't whether humanity was ready for the unknown, it was whether the unknown was ready for humanity. The shadowy figures hovered in the distance, their massive forms almost ethereal, as if the very fabric of space bent around them. They moved slowly, deliberately, their presence a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving emptiness of the void. It was as though the universe itself had exhaled a breath, and this was the result, an ancient power waiting, watching, and waiting to make its presence known. The Odyssey was caught in a silent standoff with the enigmatic beings. Their glowing, shifting forms emitted no sound, no communication, and yet their presence was undeniably intentional. It was clear, they had detected the Odyssey long before it had arrived. They were waiting just as the crew of the ship had been waiting for the unknown. But now the roles were reversed. Elena Voss stood frozen at the observation window, her breath shallow as her mind raced to make sense of the scene before her. "Commander Tanaka," she said, her voice low, "what do we know about these figures?" Tanaka, who had been frantically scanning the data streams, gave a quick glance at the captain. "They're not registering as organic life forms in the traditional sense, Captain. But there's a faint energy signature emanating from them. I believe they're made of some kind of energy-based substance, perhaps synthetic but highly advanced. Almost like a fusion of organic and mechanical." Elena's mind reeled. Could they be an ancient race of beings long gone but preserved somehow? Or are they something else entirely? "I can't say, Captain," Tanaka admitted. "It's all speculative at this point. But I would advise extreme caution. They're clearly aware of us. They're waiting." The tension on the bridge was palpable. The entire crew was on edge, unsure of what would happen next. Elena swallowed hard and straightened her back. She had trained for moments like this, though the reality of it all, facing a potential encounter with an alien civilization, was unlike anything she could have ever prepared for. Humanity had never come close to something like this before. "Captain, the ship's thrusters aren't responding," Lieutenant Cole called from his station. "We're still being pulled toward the structure. We don't have control over our trajectory. Can we stop it?" Elena asked, turning sharply to him. "I've tried everything I can," Cole replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "The pull is too strong. We're moving at a crawl, but we're getting closer." A deep hum began to vibrate through the ship again, this time resonating in Elena's chest as much as her ears. It was as if the very structure they were approaching was reaching out to them. Slowly, one of the shadowy figures extended a limb, or what appeared to be a limb, stretching toward the Odyssey. It was not a physical arm. More like an extension of energy, tendrils of light swirling in the vacuum, coiling and uncoiling with deliberate intent. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Her instincts screamed at her to prepare for the worst, but her curiosity and the weight of their mission kept her rooted to the spot. The crew, sensing her uncertainty, was equally conflicted. "Do we engage?" Alara asked, her voice quiet. "We can't simply turn away," Elena responded, her eyes not leaving the figure that was now mere meters from their ship. "We've come this far. Let's see what they want." For a moment the world seemed to pause. The ship's systems, the crew's anxious breathing, the ever-growing hum of the ship's core, it all seemed insignificant compared to the vast presence of the beings before them. And then, as if it had been waiting for them to make a move, the energy figure made contact with the Odyssey. The moment the tendril touched the hull of the ship, the entire vessel seemed to ripple. The crew felt a sudden pressure building in their chests, as if the very fabric of reality itself had warped around them. The lights on the bridge flickered, then stabilized. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the energy receded, pulling back into the dark structure. Elena's breath escaped in a rush. What was that? What just happened? "I don't know," Cole said, staring at the control panels in disbelief. "But the ship's systems, they're fine. In fact, they're better than fine. We've just received an upgrade, without so much as a manual download." Tanaka quickly ran a scan, her hands shaking. "Captain, this is impossible. The ship's systems are now integrating data we've never encountered. Advanced energy signatures, propulsion systems that shouldn't even exist, and there's something else." Her voice faltered. "There's a pattern emerging. It's like they've given us something." Elena turned to face her, her mind racing. The Odyssey had been upgraded, but by what? What? And what did that mean for them? "It's possible," Tanaka continued, "that these beings have shared something with us. Perhaps it's a gift, or a test." Elena's gaze turned back to the shadowy figures. They were no longer hovering motionless. Instead, they had shifted, arranging themselves into a formation that almost seemed deliberate, something that resembled an ancient symbol, a pattern, or a code. It was as though they were communicating through actions rather than words. "Are they trying to tell us something?" Cole asked, his voice tinged with awe. "I think they are," Elena replied, her heart pounding. "But it's not going to be easy to understand. Not right now." Before anyone could react further, a new series of signals began to flash on the bridge's displays. They weren't coming from the shadowy figures. Instead, they seemed to be coming from deep within the dark structure. The signals were now clearer, with a sharpness that was almost human in their precision. The language was complex, beautiful, and utterly foreign. But it was undeniably a message, a first step toward understanding who these beings were and what they wanted from humanity. Elena could feel it in her gut. They were standing on the edge of something profound. And it was only just beginning. The Odyssey hung suspended in the void, its sensors ablaze with the unknown signals pouring in from the massive structure before them. The crew was eerily silent, each of them processing the enormity of the situation in their own way. Captain Elena Voss stood in the center of the bridge, her mind focused, her pulse steady despite the weight of the moment. Humanity was on the brink of discovering something beyond their wildest imaginations. The signals that had been once faint and unclear were now undeniable. They had grown sharper, more defined, and the strange code displayed on the screen took shape. A language, a pattern, an undeniable message. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Cole called from his station, his voice taut with excitement. Elena crossed the room to his side, her heart quickening. On the screen, the signals were forming into geometric patterns, spirals, and shapes that rotated slowly. At first glance, it was incomprehensible, a mosaic of light and energy that made no sense. But then, as if the universe had flipped a switch, a message began to unfold. The patterns were shifting, aligning into recognizable forms, shapes that seemed to form symbols. A series of lines, spirals, and then a set of precise geometric figures. A language, no doubt, but one so alien, so far beyond human comprehension, that it felt like an entirely new way of perceiving the universe. And yet, there was something undeniably familiar about the arrangement, something that tugged at the back of Elena's mind. "Can you translate it?" Elena asked, her voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Tanaka was already at her side, her hands flying over the interface. "I'm trying, but it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's more than just language, there's an underlying rhythm, almost like a musical cadence. A frequency that doesn't just speak to the mind but resonates with something deeper. Something emotional." "I don't care about the how," Elena said, a hint of impatience in her voice. "Can you read it?" Tanaka hesitated, her fingers hovering over the console. Yes, I think I can pull some structure from it. But it's fragmented. It's almost like it's not meant to be understood all at once. The message is layered." The symbols began to flicker in rapid succession, and then, slowly, they coalesced into a more recognizable form, a sequence of words. "We are the custodians of the void. You have crossed into our domain. We have watched. We have waited. You are the first of many." The words echoed across the bridge, though no sound filled the air. Instead, the message reverberated through the ship's systems, felt deep within their bones. The room seemed to pulse with the weight of the words. "The first?" Cole asked, his brow furrowed. "What does that mean? The first of many what?" "I think we're being called the first as in the first to find them, but also the first to interact with them," Elena speculated, trying to make sense of the cryptic message. "It's as if they've been waiting for us, for humanity." The next part of the message materialized in front of them, this time more direct, more urgent. "You seek knowledge. You seek power. You seek to understand the unknown. But beware. You have not yet learned the cost of what you seek. You are not prepared for what you will face. The path you walk leads to the creation and the destruction of all things." A wave of unease washed over the crew. Elena could feel it, like a weight pressing down on her chest. This wasn't a message of hope or alliance. It was a warning. "Do they mean they'll destroy us?" Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think it's that simple," Elena replied, trying to steady her thoughts. "This isn't a threat, it's more like a caution. They're telling us that there are consequences to what we've begun." The third part of the message came, its energy almost tangible now, as if it were unfolding before them like a living being, its essence reaching into their minds. "The key to the universe lies in the space between the stars. In the silence of the dark frontier, we protect the secrets of the ancients. You must prove yourself worthy to understand them. But know this, there is no return from what you will learn. Once the door is opened, it cannot be closed." The silence in the room was deafening. The weight of the words hung in the air, unspoken but deeply felt by every crew member. There were no clear answers here, only riddles and veiled warnings. We have to prove ourselves worthy?" Tanaka said, shaking her head as if trying to process it all. "What does that even mean? And what do they mean by the door?" "We don't know yet," Elena said, her voice resolute. "But we're going to find out. We're the first ones to receive this message. That means we have an obligation, to humanity, to the rest of the galaxy, to understand it. To uncover what's hidden here." "But they said there's no return," Cole argued. "Does that mean we can't go back once we start this? That we're crossing some kind of irreversible line?" "We don't know that for sure," Elena replied, her eyes fixed on the screen. The images of the alien structure loomed, shifting in and out of focus. "But we've come this far. We can't stop now. Before they could speak further, the message continued, almost as if it had sensed their resolve. You must decide now. The journey forward is not one of mere exploration. It is a trial, a reckoning. The knowledge you seek may save your species, or destroy it. Choose wisely, first ones. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. The symbols faded into the blackness, leaving behind nothing but an eerie silence. The crew stood frozen, the weight of the message settling around them. Elena knew they stood at the edge of something monumental. Humanity was on the cusp of understanding the universe in a way no one had ever dreamed of. But at what cost? Elena, Tanaka said quietly, her eyes locked on the now blank screen, what do we do? Elena turned back to her crew. The Odyssey had been sent to the dark frontier to explore, to discover. But now it was more than that. They were not merely explorers anymore, they were participants in something much larger, a story that spanned eons, a story that humanity had just begun to write. We move forward, Elena said firmly, her gaze unyielding. Whatever happens, we keep moving forward. We were chosen, and now it's up to us to prove that we are worthy. With that, the Odyssey began its slow, deliberate approach toward the alien structure, as the crew faced their trial, and the unknown, together. The Odyssey drifted closer to the colossal structure, its engines barely humming as it approached the center of the alien domain. The message they had received still echoed in the minds of the crew. The warning was clear. The path ahead would be one of trial and reckoning, where knowledge could either uplift humanity or shatter it completely. No one knew exactly what lay ahead. Yet, despite the risks, Elena's resolve remained steadfast. The ship's forward viewport displayed the structure in full now, a dark, seemingly infinite tower stretching beyond the edge of their field of vision. It was made of materials that seemed to defy the natural order, shifting between forms as though alive and conscious of their approach. Its surface, like liquid metal, rippled and pulsated with an eerie luminescence. From within its depths, the hum of unseen forces resonated, vibrating through the ship itself. Elena, we're getting strange readings, Tanaka said, her voice low but urgent. The structure, it's reacting to us in ways we didn't expect. It's as though the entire thing is alive, as if it's responding. Elena turned to the science officer, her gaze sharp. What kind of response? Are we talking about systems activating? It's not like any system I've ever seen. It's more primal, almost as though it's testing us, Tanaka replied, her eyes glued to the readouts on her console. It's like the ship and the structure are in sync with each other. The closer we get, the more connected we feel to it, like the ship is resonating with the energy. A chill ran down Elena's spine. This wasn't simply a test of knowledge, as the message had warned, it was a test of humanity's very essence. But what were they being tested for? We need to proceed carefully, Elena said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Can we confirm if there's any way inside this structure? We've been analyzing it for the past hour, Captain, Alara added. There are no clear entry points, not in the way we would expect. But I believe there's a hidden entrance. It's not physical, at least not in the way we're used to thinking of one. Hidden? Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. What do you mean? I believe the structure is, how do I put this, reacting to our presence. It's like it's testing our intentions. I've never seen anything like it before, but I think it's waiting for something to trigger its response. And I'm starting to suspect that what happens next depends on us, on the choices we make. Elena nodded gravely. Prepare the crew for whatever comes next. I want everyone on high alert. We may not know what's ahead, but we have to be ready. The crew scrambled to carry out their orders, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. The ship's proximity to the structure was now dangerously close. Elena stood at the bridge, staring at the alien tower, unsure of what would happen once they entered. The message had hinted that this was not a journey for mere exploration, it was a trial. And trials, by their very nature, were designed to test their limits. The Odyssey entered the final stretch toward the structure, the gravitational pull from the energy field surrounding it growing stronger. There was no turning back now. The ship shuddered as it crossed an invisible threshold, and in that moment, the entire vessel seemed to hum with energy. A low, melodic vibration filled the ship, like a sound coming from deep within the fabric of space itself. Suddenly, the structure before them responded. A massive section of the tower opened up, not with a mechanical noise but with a subtle shift in the space itself. A glowing door, translucent and shimmering, appeared as though the very fabric of reality had parted. Beyond it, an array of glowing symbols hung in mid-air, surrounding an open passageway that led further into the heart of the structure. Elena's breath caught in her throat. This is it, she murmured. We're going in. Captain, Tanaka said, her voice low, I'm detecting an anomaly. The passage, it's not what it seems. I'm getting strange energy readings from within. It's like the structure is folding in on itself. Are you saying it's dangerous? Elena's voice tightened. Not dangerous in the way we might expect, Tanaka replied, her eyes glued to the monitors. It's more like a mental barrier, something that could test our perception. It might not be a physical danger, but it could affect our minds. What do you mean by that? Elena asked, her pulse quickening. Is there any way we can prepare? Tanaka's eyes darted over the console, scanning the data. I'm not sure, Captain. But it's clear now that whatever lies inside the structure, it's going to force us to confront something deep within ourselves. A challenge that might not be as simple as solving a puzzle. Understood, Elena said, her tone calm but determined. We're going in regardless. Prepare for an unknown. With the glowing doorway before them, the Odyssey crept closer, its crew bracing for whatever was about to unfold. Elena stood at the helm, her heart beating with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. They were about to unlock something ancient, something that could change the fate of humanity forever. The ship passed through the glowing doorway. As they did, the world around them seemed to warp, stretching and contorting in ways that defied the laws of physics. The ship's systems flickered, but it held firm. The crew gripped their stations, their senses on edge as they entered the heart of the structure. Inside, the walls shifted like liquid metal, constantly moving, adapting. Massive pillars of energy pulsed in the distance, their power beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. The space was vast, endless, even like they had crossed into another dimension, one where time and space no longer followed the same rules. The crew had no idea what lay ahead, but they knew one thing for certain. They were no longer simply exploring the unknown. They had entered a realm of trials, a place where the boundaries of reality and perception would be tested. And as the structure around them began to hum with energy, the first trial began. Elena held her breath. What would the structure reveal? Would humanity survive the test, or would they fall, consumed by the power they sought to understand? The air inside the alien structure was thick, not with oxygen or atmosphere, but with a sense of overwhelming presence. The walls pulsed with light, and the ship's systems hummed with strange energy, barely able to keep up with the alien forces flowing through it. The crew of the Odyssey stood on the precipice of something extraordinary, perhaps the greatest discovery humanity would ever know. Yet they were also aware that this discovery could come at an unimaginable cost. Captain, there's something in the distance, Tanaka said, her voice tense. A shape or a form, I'm not sure. But it's approaching us. Elena's gaze shot across the control room, her senses alert as she peered into the viewport. In the dim glow, a figure began to take shape, massive and almost entirely composed of shifting energy, like the beings they had encountered before. This new entity, however, was different. It wasn't a mere presence, it was a force. This is it, Elena whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. This must be the trial. The figure moved toward them, its movements fluid and deliberate, and yet there was an undeniable weight to its form. It wasn't just made of energy, it seemed to embody it, shifting in and out of phases, like it existed in multiple states of reality at once. As it neared, the ship's hull vibrated, as though resonating with the being. Elena had only one thought: they had crossed the threshold. Whatever lay ahead was meant to test them, test humanity itself. And now they had to face it. The massive entity stopped just before the Odyssey, its presence dominating the entire chamber. Its form solidified, and though there was no mouth, no eyes, Elena felt it communicating directly with her mind, her thoughts interwoven with the being's. There was no word spoken, no sound, but the message was clear. You seek to understand, to wield the power of the ancients. But you must first prove your worth, first once. The path forward is one of sacrifice. Only those who transcend their own limitations can inherit what is hidden. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, the very essence of the words settling into their bones. The entity's form shifted, expanding and contracting like a heartbeat, pulsing with immense energy. Then, as if to demonstrate its point, it raised a tendril made of pure light and energy. The tendril moved toward the ship, its trajectory aligned directly with the bridge. Elena! Alara shouted, fear creeping into her voice. It's coming straight at us. Stay calm. Elena commanded, though her own pulse quickened. We don't know its intent. Hold your positions. The tendril reached the hull, and just before contact, it dissipated, transforming into a stream of light that entered the ship. There was no explosion, no collision. The light spread throughout the Odyssey, penetrating every system and console, flowing through the core and the data banks. The ship shuddered as it was flooded with an overwhelming influx of information, data streams unfiltered and unprocessed. It was as though the ship had been connected to a vast living network of knowledge far beyond human comprehension. "Captain?" Tanaka gasped, her hands flying over the console. "The ship's systems are syncing with the structure. It's like we're being integrated into its very fabric." Elena staggered back, her head spinning. The information pouring into her mind was overwhelming, faster than she could process, too vast to contain. But then something unexpected happened. The flood of knowledge paused and a single thought broke through the torrent. "The test begins now." The ship's interior shifted, its walls blurring as though reality itself was bending around them. It was no longer just the ship that was being tested. It was the crew. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The words, the warnings, they all made sense now. The trial was not just about the structure or the power it held. It was about humanity's ability to rise above its instincts, to transcend its limitations and embrace the unknown. It was a test of their minds, their hearts, and their souls. "You must choose," the entity's voice resonated again, though no words were spoken aloud. "To inherit the knowledge of the universe, you must first understand the price of that knowledge. Will you surrender your essence, your humanity, to unlock the doors that lie beyond? Will you sacrifice all that you are for the truth you seek?" A deep, uncomfortable silence filled the room. Elena stared at the shimmering walls of the structure, her mind torn. Could they really make this choice? Could they afford to risk everything? What would humanity become if they accepted the offer? The weight of the decision pressed on her chest, heavy and suffocating. "I don't know if we can," Elena whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "We're not ready. None of us are." But even as she said the words, a deep understanding began to take shape within her. They had come here seeking answers, seeking knowledge and power, but that search had to be tempered by a greater understanding of what it meant to wield such power. And what they were about to face wasn't just a choice between knowledge and ignorance. It was a choice between retaining their humanity and losing it forever. Suddenly, the ship's interface flared up, and the alien entity's voice reverberated in their minds once again. "The path forward is open to you. But know this, there is no going back. Choose first once. Choose and awaken the next chapter of your existence. You will either ascend or perish." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and final. The crew stood in stunned silence, the weight of the decision pressing on each of them. Elena's heart raced in her chest. In this moment, the fate of humanity lay in their hands. They were standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into the vast unknown, and there was no way to predict what would happen next. "Elena," Tanaka said quietly, breaking the silence. "What do we do now?" Elena took a long, steadying breath. She knew that the future of humanity, of all that they had ever known, was forever changed. They had come for knowledge, but the true test was whether they could withstand the burden of that knowledge. Could they live with the consequences of their actions? Or would they be lost in the vastness of the unknown? With a final glance at her crew, Elena's voice was resolute. "We move forward. We choose to ascend. But we will do it together, humans in all our imperfection facing the unknown as one." And with that, the Odyssey moved deeper into the heart of the structure, where the trial would continue, and the reckoning would begin.